But there are two things that must be done. Let's start with the simplest thing, which is on the table now. Remember, the impeachment's in the background. But impeachment is not the issue. The impeachment is getting Cheney out. You get Cheney out now, and the situation can be made manageable. If you do not get Cheney out, you're kissing civilization goodbye. If it survives, it's no good, not to your credit. And any congressman who says he's not going to get Cheney out now should leave the premises now as a final act of decency. It's Nancy Pelosi and others. They can't get Cheney out now. If they're not determined to do it now, this month, before they leave Washington, they should quit now. Submit their resignation and let somebody who's more competent come in. Because it has to happen. Cheney has to go. The impeachment process is not the process by which you get rid of Cheney. The process by which you get rid of Cheney is a number of gentlemen and ladies meet and tell this jerk that he's gone. Voluntarily. It'd be his best option. Get him out of there. Break the command structure. Isolate the idiot in the White House. He then becomes manageable. As long as Cheney's in there, he is not manageable. He has no brains, he has no intelligence, he has no judgment. He's a fool. But he was put into the presidency because people who put him there knew he was a fool. They put him under the supervision of Cheney as his babysitter. Get Cheney out. Cheney is tied to the evil. I could go more into that. But this is what has to happen. Now, the first thing we're going to have to do, we're going to have to make a decision right away to pull back the U.S. troops in the Southwest Asia. We have to pull them back into holding positions. The fundamental thing we have to do, and it won't work by itself, the holding position means you're pulling the United States troops out of the conflict into holding positions. Therefore, you are changing the position of the U.S. troops from combatants and the issue and the target to a factor in which a group of nations will make the decision to solve the problem. That, from a military and strategic standpoint, a diplomatic standpoint, will work. It can be done. The algebra is known. A number of specialists have presented the algebra. It will work. As far as a motion concerned, as mechanics will work. But it won't work by itself. Not because it's not a good idea, not because it's not a workable idea, because politically it's not adequate. You have to come up with something more. You have to come up with a group of nations, a group of powers, who recognize that the instability of this region is a threat to the continuation of civilization. And therefore, a remedy has to be forced through. And only when a dominant group of nations say, we agree, we are going to take the concerted power of our nations and insist that this happens, there will be no resistance. It will happen. We're going to have stabilization in this region. This means what I proposed earlier. It cannot be done unless we induce the idiot who's under adult supervision in the White House, without Cheney, to carry forth on what was started at Kennebunkport. Move in that direction, an inclination to move in that direction. Get Cheney out and go back into the Kennebunkport posture. At that point, the President of the United States, or the office of the President of the United States, has to make an offer to Putin. And Putin will, without question, accept the offer. And that is to build a coalition immediately in the context of moving these troops, U.S. troops, away from the area of conflict, where all they are is targets there. They're not accomplishing anything except being targets. If you want them to be targets, keep them there. The only function they're performing right now is as targets. get them out of the target range. All right, now if we approach Russia and Putin, Putin will accept the offer. If the United States government proposes to President Putin that the United States, Russia, China, and support of India become a sponsoring committee to build immediately a group among nations who are going to address these global problems which have to be dealt with immediately. Because smaller nations, individual nations, can't do it. You have to change the world monetary financial system immediately. And you cannot do that with a couple of small nations. You can only do that from the top. You have to pull together the might of the world, the major powers of the world, and those who will support them, and say we're going to change immediately the world monetary system. We're going to get rid of the floating exchange rate monetary system. We're going back immediately to a fixed exchange rate system. Because if we do not go back to a fixed exchange rate system of the Franklin Roosevelt prototype, then there's no possibility of preventing a general collapse and disintegration of the world economies. It can't be done. Therefore, you have to have a power group which says we're going to save this planet from hell. One of the things we're going to do, which is the trigger point, is to get something done in Southwest Asia, to get the U.S. troops out of the target range and pull them into a holding position where they become a factor in negotiating the peaceful reconstruction of the region. That will not work by itself unless you have a power group which includes 4 powerful nations of this planet and others who decide that that's going to work. A power group which agrees that we're going back to a fixed exchange rate system by government degree as made by governments in concert. We're going to stop the floating exchange rate system. We're going to take steps to clean up the financial mess. Most of the financial claims and the financial assets and obligations in the world today are worthless. You have play money. You have the stock market is a fraud. The Treasury Department is committing a fraud. Most governments are committing fraud. And the British government is the worst of them all. The British government and the British system is the worst offender that we have to deal with on this planet. They organized this war. They organized most of the evil that's done in the world today. So they will not be considered as having any veto rights in this matter. But the major powers are going to say we're going to have to go back to a fixed exchange rate system. We're going to do it immediately by treaty agreement, by signed agreement among countries. We're going to freeze a lot of things, but we're going to make sure that things that have to be paid, things that have to go on, will go on. That production is not cut, farming proceeds, food is produced, infrastructure is built, so forth. And we'll have to build our way out of this process by steps, which begin with these measures. And the measure is a matter of the will of a powerful group of nations, not just the 4, but a powerful group of nations which agree that this has to be done because hell on earth has to be prevented. And that's the only way it's going to happen. And therefore, to do this, we must remove Cheney. Anyone who is not prepared to remove Cheney should immediately leave any official position in the U.S. government, right now. And they should be told to leave. They should be impeached, hounded out of office, or whatever is necessary. Get them out of there. They're an impediment. Because we're going to return this government in particular to its people. And you see what's happened with the contempt which the leaders of the Congress have shown toward the people. The contempt they've shown toward the majority of elected representatives in the Congress. Toward the majority of people out there who are the constituents. What right do they have to say they represent the people when they're against the people? The people want us out of Southwest Asia. And anyone who's not prepared to do that is not going to have a hearing with the great majority of the American people. More than 3/4 of the Democrats insist on this. More than half of the Republicans insist on this. Others will insist and join it en masse. if they think it has a coon's chance of surviving. Huh?